Hi, I'm TM Gowett, welcoming you here for our third vlog on the Faith Through Fiction series. Just to recap, our first episode was on bullying and how fiction can demonstrate the many ways we can deal with this teen struggle, from the perspective of the bully, the victim of bullying, and the person watching from afar. The second episode was on the topic of putting God first and how in a selfish society, a world where we often look to please ourselves, we need to find ways to instead place God in the forefront of everything we do. If you haven't had a chance to check out those first two vlogs, then visit our YouTube page, after watching this, of course. Anyway, back to the matter at hand and this vlog. Now, with Lent in full swing, how appropriate that this month's topic is on sacrifice. Why? Because Lent is all about self-denial, sacrifice. It's about giving up those things that we've come to desire or rely on. It means showing discipline, strength, and sometimes even courage. But while sacrifice is the epitome of Lent through the very pillars of prayer, fast, and almsgiving, sacrifice is not reserved for Lent alone. It should be practiced on a regular basis. Now, for teens, that may seem a little heavy and a lot to ask, right? I mean, you're so close to becoming an adult and getting on with your own life and doing your own thing. The last thing you want to hear about is giving up things. I get that. But we're Catholics, and sacrifice plays a major role in our lives. Let's remember that Jesus made the ultimate sacrifice for our sake. He gave his life to save us. He sacrificed himself for us, for our sins. That's huge. He loves us that much. Sacrifice is an act of love. And if we love Jesus, what better way to show him than to sacrifice for him and for others too? Because whatever we do for the least of them, we do for him. That's Matthew 25, verse 40. This month's featured author will be discussing this difficult topic with you. So let me pass you on to fellow CatholicTeenBooks author Leslea Wahl so you can find out who it is.
Thank you, TM. Yes, we have a fantastic author discussing the subject of sacrifice, Corinna Turner. She is the author of Mandy Lamb and the Full Moon, Elfling, and the I Am Margaret series. Corinna has been writing since she was 14 and likes strong protagonists with plenty of integrity. A Catholic Christian with roots in the Methodist and Anglican churches, she's a lay Dominican and currently lives in the UK. Corinna is a keen moviegoer, loves to spend time with her grandma, and travel around in her camper van. She can be found most days closeted away writing. We're so pleased to have her with us today, sharing her I Am Margaret series and how it reflects this month's teen struggle, sacrifice. Here's Corinna.
A couple of years ago, a young Christian man in Pakistan was acting as a volunteer guard at a church whilst Mass was being said inside, when a suicide bomber tried to enter the church. The young man threw himself at the suicide bomber and succeeded in stopping him from entering, and absorbed most of the force of the blast with his own body. He was killed, but he saved tens of innocent lives inside the church, maybe even hundreds. This, of course, is self-sacrifice on a scale that most of us will never have to imitate. But we would all like to believe that if such a situation arose, we would step up and we would do what was necessary. But we need to consider whether we would really be able to do such a thing if we have not been in the habit of sacrificing for anybody in our daily life. Sacrifice, like generosity and love, is like a muscle. If you don't use it, it gets weaker. If you exercise it, it gets stronger. If we're not prepared to let our little sister have the last cupcake, or sacrifice an hour of free time to look after a sick brother, or to help our mother with the washing up, or even to simply sacrifice the pleasure we would get from passing on a piece of gossip, or the pleasure we would get from watching a TV series we deep down know is probably not very good for us. If we're not prepared to make really small sacrifices, then we have to wonder whether, when a really serious sacrifice was demanded of us, we would actually be able, with the grace of God, to step up and to offer it. Sacrifice is a challenging subject because it doesn't come easily to us. Sacrifice, when it's real sacrifice, is usually not enjoyable. It's not pleasant. If we sacrifice something that doesn't hurt, in a sense, it's not really a sacrifice. It's more of it may be a good thing, but it's not actual sacrifice. Sacrifice is quite a common theme in my books, but especially in the I Am Margaret series, throughout pretty much the whole series. It's a very important theme in the first book, I Am Margaret, where Margot frequently has to decide whether to do what is best for herself or whether to sacrifice what is best for herself for the benefit of her comrades in distress. And sometimes this does involve some pretty extreme sacrifice on her part. The other two books in the series where sacrifice is probably most important are these two. This is Brothers and The Siege of Reginald Hill. Sorry, it's an ugly proof cover on that one. These are both about Margot's brother, Kyle. In this book, Kyle is trying to reach the Vatican. He hopes to become a priest. He's got a good plan, he's prepared well, he's got a very good chance of making it. And then he meets Joe, who's 13. Joe has no plan. Joe did not know he was going to have to flee. He's fleeing from the government for a different reason. But his life is also in danger. Kyle has to decide whether to sacrifice his own chances and risk his own life to help Joe. In The Siege of Reginald Hill, this book is also about Kyle. It's set many years later, when Kyle is a priest in Africa, and he's kidnapped from his church one night by his sister's worst enemy, who basically just wants to kill him as horribly as possible for revenge on Margaret, his sister. But Kyle is not prepared to give up on anyone, and he would like to convert and save this very evil man. And most people would just think, no chance, you're wasting your time. But not Kyle. He's not prepared to quit. He is prepared to sacrifice absolutely anything acceptable in order to help Reginald Hill. So, in fact, this is probably the book that has the most sacrifice in the I Am Margaret series. So, I think sacrifice is very important, a very important theme in fiction, because it makes us think about, could I do it? And we should also therefore think, how can I make myself more likely to do it? And of course, the way to make oneself more likely to be able to hold firm and sacrifice for one's faith or one's family in a really serious situation is to exercise that muscle and to sacrifice each day, start small and work up. Thank you.
Thank you, Corinna. I have to tell you guys that I'm such a fan of Corinna's books, and The Siege of Reginald Hill was an incredible read, which leads me to some more fantastic stories by Catholic Teen Books authors that reflect sacrifice. For example, Saint Dymphna of Ireland, The King's Prey by Susan Peake. It is a heart-pounding, faith-filled historical fiction story that brings a true saint to life. Set in Ireland, it tells of a king who went crazy after losing his wife. And in his mentally ill state, he believes his daughter, Dymphna, to be his late wife and starts pursuing her across the country. She's assisted by Turlough and Breoch, two estranged brothers with a scarred past, and a priest, all who offer sacrifices in various ways in order to protect and save her. This story is a must-read if you're into action-packed adventures with thrilling suspense. Not even kidding. The next story I have is Saint Magnus, the Last Viking. This is another one of Susan Peake's amazing historical fiction stories about a real saint, in which conflict unfolds between Magnus Erlendsson, a heroic young prince devoted to God, and his outlawed cousin Hakon. This story offers example after example of sacrifice. The most pivotal moment follows the example of Christ when Magnus sacrifices for his brother Erling's soul, and later how Magnus is willing to sacrifice to save two of his friends, the extent of which you'll have to find out by reading the book. The third story I have is on my handy dandy Kindle here. Let's see if I can find it. There we go. Excuse any glare. I will have this on at the end of the video so you can see it better. That was Rightfully Ours by Carolyn Astfalk. And it's a contemporary novel for older teens, and it tells of a young couple, Paul and Rachel, and their relationship strengthens from friendship into love. But when temptation threatens their chastity, they have to both sacrifice instant gratification for the good of one another. And my final book that I have as an example of sacrifice is also on my Kindle. It is Chasing Liberty by Theresa Linden. And the theme of sacrifice runs through the entire Chasing Liberty trilogy. The dark culture in this dystopian future is devoid of faith and values, and it breeds a selfish and self-centered spirit in most of its citizens. People only want to do what pleases them. But Liberty possesses the spirit of sacrifice, demonstrated in the way she cares for the others, the most vulnerable, the disposable. And in her attempts to avoid government-assigned vocation, she discovers an underground group that possess the true spirit of sacrifice, not only expressing it in their daily lives, but also extending it to her. And through them, she learns how to sacrifice everything to help bring freedom to others. Well, those are my suggestions of fiction that reflects the theme of sacrifice. Leslea, what do you have lined up?
Thanks, TM. That's a great list. I have a few suggestions as well. The first is Treachery and Truth by Katy Huth Jones. This historical fiction is about a real-life Bohemian king. This king happens to be the one in the Christmas carol, Good King Wenceslas. Well, this king was completely dedicated to his faith. He prayed about every decision he made. He was determined to do the right thing for his people and for his faith, even when faced with tremendous pressure from those around him. He was willing to sacrifice everything for his beliefs. The next book I have is 7 Riddles to Nowhere by AJ Cattapan. This middle grade story is about a young Catholic schoolboy who has the chance to win a large sum of money. Cam and his friends explore Chicago churches as they decipher a set of clues. Now, Cam could use this money for his own benefit, but he decides to make a personal sacrifice and try to save their Catholic school from closing. Another great one is The Other Side of Freedom by Cynthia T. Toney. This book is a middle grade historical fiction. It's set in the 1920s and is about an Italian immigrant family. When Sal and his father become unwilling accomplices to a crime, his family is threatened. But Sal believes telling the truth is the most important thing, even if it means he must sacrifice his friends, his home, and his future. The last choice I have for you is The Perfect Blindside, which is my own book. The lead character, Jake, is a snowboarding superstar who moves to a small Colorado mountain town. He becomes entangled in an illegal operation plaguing the town, and in order to do the right thing, he makes the decision to sacrifice his relationship with the girl he likes in order to keep her safe. The extreme aspect of sacrifice requires strength and courage, but as Corinna reminds us, many of us won't have to give of ourselves in that way. In our daily lives, at home, at school, hanging out with friends or parents, all of these moments are opportunities to sacrifice. These daily opportunities require some form of strength and discipline, especially when we are tempted to just please ourselves. I mean, let's be honest. Who wants pain or displeasure or disappointment on our end? Even Jesus was reluctant to follow through with his sacrifice because he was going to suffer extreme pain. In Matthew 26:39, he prays, "Let this cup pass from me," but then goes on to say, "Nevertheless, not as I will, but as thou wilt." So he knows it will hurt, but is willing to go through with it because he loves his Father and he loves us. Wow. Jesus is our guide, with sacrifice being his ultimate gift to us. So we cannot ignore it. We have to make it a part of our own lives, being willing to make sacrifices for others as well as sacrifices for him. If we make it a daily occurrence, accepting small opportunities to put others before ourselves in a way that leaves us wanting, it will become easier. Hebrews 13:16 reminds us that we are called to sacrifice. It says, "Do not neglect to do good and to share what you have, for such sacrifices are pleasing to God." I pray this Lenten season offers us many opportunities to practice sacrifice. Well, that's it. Thank you for joining us for Faith Through Fiction. Until next time, check out more of our exciting, edifying titles on CatholicTeenBooks.com, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and sign up for our monthly newsletter. From me, Leslea Wahl, and fellow Catholic Teen Books author T.M. Gowett, God bless.